welcome. Alright, we continue from this space. Yeah, this is the problem I always encounter. Alright, how do I know this thing is recording? I don't know. I'd hope it is. Time passes and we receive a new requirement. The people who manage these workflows needs the ability to skip individual steps. Given the stakes involved, skipping a step doesn't come lightly. In addition to recording who did the skipping and when, we also need to store an auditable trail of why it was skipped. This again sounds pretty easy. We've already got user and timestamps on the model for handling when it gets completed, right? So this is just more of the same. Some copy and paste prop action. Just copy and paste it. Okay, so let's do this. Let's have let's say we have another user skipped by, and you have another instant skipped on. Have that, and we have a reason, so I'll call it a string reason, something like that. But two things are the same to me, these two, so why can't we just take this out and have that? So maybe we change the name. Instead of completed, we call it like the person and also this too can be taken out, right? Like something like this. So we can say the user is, let's say, agent. Maybe the agent uses the agent time. Right, so this can be just a generic thing, correct? New rec. Right, so, and we have new rec 1. This is how I'd do it. I wouldn't say, so this can be, it's not, is it clear? Is this clear? How about this? I am not so certain. Right, like I'm not certain that this is clear. Okay, so you copy and paste. This is how I would approach this. So it's going to be a status. But this is nullable. And this means we are still in the same boat. So we're still in the same boat because one of the reasons is still contextual, right? User, maybe an agent, but an agent, what do we call them? I don't know. Well, let's carry on. Let's return it back since you said maybe this, right, something like this. And you see now it's telling us an classes. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine. Status. It's still not warning us. This is just crazy. Well, no problem. The only new things here is the rationale for why it was skipped, which we'll have to talk to some of our Rocket people to understand what they're after. But we could go ahead and drop those new fields into the models now. So we have this, and then you say rationale. Maybe just stick with what they are talking about. 7K. What is your rationale? Leave. All right. So we done that. So that is that's it for this one. So now refactoring the code rather than the meaning, right? So you don't your don't repeat yourself sensibilities might be twitching from the code in 4.19. Things are almost the same. Things that are almost the same causes a visceral reaction in the mind of the developer. We have to know we must get rid of duplication in all of its forms. You know, or else then you're repeating things and you might forget. It's a question of when you forget, not if you're gonna forget. So, what we might do at this point is look at what we've written down and start playing around with the refactoring out of the duplication. Yeah, so for me, I would say take this out, right? Take this out and have one, right? So you have only a user, maybe we call it an agent as before, an agent, and let's say action time. What action though? Like, what does this mean? What does this does action time mean? Correct? Like, is it clear? Is it clear? Clear, and can it be named differently? Correct? You know what I mean? Yeah. So what we might do at this point is look at what we've written down and start playing around with refactoring out the duplication. So to me, you have one agent, one instant time, and this is the culprit still, right? Like, we still have a null state here, which is not preferred. Which is not preferred. The first thing we might do is refactor out the similar attribute. So we have the actions, which is what we have here, combining separate fields into a single one. Action. Yeah, right. Cool. That's better, I guess. Action by, I guess, was better. And now this becomes action by, and action on. Sorry. Action by. Alright, you have action by on, maybe on. I don't know what is mentioned time or something. Okay, first thing we might do is factor out the similar attributes. Cool. And complete action on. So we can do undo. So status. And do the same thing with both boolean values. Did we have two boolean values? This is crazy. Boolean is skipped. Oh, we gotta know if it's skipped in it. Boolean is skipped. That's correct. That is a problem. Not good. So now is skipped. We can just create, since we have two of them, they can be an enum. Status. Status something. And that status is going to be complete. What should I say? They all capitalize. Complete skipped. Skipped. Okay. Sound like that. Is it this way? Yeah. Cool. So here we can do, I don't know. Well, we can say status. I don't know if this is even allowed. Status. Cool. This is even allowed. All right. Enum. Error on token enum status expected. I don't know what that means. I don't know. That's terrible. Java enum class. Yep, so you don't do this. Find that and take this out. Cool. Alright. Alright. That's a problem. Right, cool. So we changed this to, yeah, so we have to we could do something, right? Use SDK, use Java 25. Okay. I don't know, so Java come on. Java old Java. Alright, so new status enum class may not be instantiated. Alright, so I know that's cool. should I call this? Progress. Progress. Something like that. So we can say, well, so now we can do the same thing as dk Java 25, and then Java old Java is completed, blah 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 blah. Right, so it failed because it's completed is right. So now we do not have like is completed. Cool. Good. Use Java 25 Oracle and come on. Old Java. Alright, so new required type is user. No actual define length. So step user instant. Oh yes, I need like I need them old. Let me show you the craziness I can do here. Alright, so I can give it fine n no. So cool. Alright. Right. So now we're good. Isn't that awesome? And now I go back to the actual SDK. That's awesome. Cool. Yeah. So not started. They even have a not started bar. Alright, cool. Get rid of some most of the more egregious duplication. We still have a bunch of contextual and obnoxiously nullable fields, but at least there are fewer of them than there otherwise would be. Without question, it is much dry. There's less code, which is nice, but has it actually solved the root problem? I think we'd have to say no. The same set of problems that were plaguing us with the last round of attributes we added remains. The meaning is still contextual. Our refactoring has slowed the rate at which things get worse, but they're still getting worse. Despite drying things, we are still contending with illegal states that only exist because of how we model the data. We still need to defend against them in the constructor, right? They agree that you gotta know, is this started? Is the progress started? If it's started, is it completed? If it's completed, I guess that's what he's saying here, right? So we should strive to make a record as simple as it can be. You should not have a ton of defensiveness here, right? Cool. If we need to add more statuses in the future, say for tracking which procedures are started or blocked, the amount of validation we have to do and our chances of getting it wrong is going to just keep growing. We'll soon be drowning in if statements. Further, the construction validation I gotta do something. Give me a second. Alright. Back. Alright. Further, the construction validation woes are just part of the problem. The bigger task is the one we pay everywhere else in our code base. We've fallen back into the problem we're trying to solve in the previous chapter, where our code forgets what the data type means as soon as it's constructed. Somewhere, we want to use our data types. We have to defensively check or rely on human reasoning powers in order to avoid making a mistake. This defensive coding will spread like a virus to each and every place we interact with our data. If we don't defensively check to enforce our assumptions about the data, we leave a minefield of potential null pointer exceptions for others to stumble on as they try to dereference things which aren't actually present on the model. Alright, so you have something like do something with completed. So you give it a status. If the status equals if it's not as completed, you do something else. Else you throw expected completed. But you're saying if the status is not equal completed, if it's not equal completed, you do something else. Oh, if it's not equal complete, if it's not completed, you do something and then you throw an exception immediately afterwards. Expected completed. However, if it's completed, you still throw an exception, so I don't know what this is supposed to be. How all our code will end up looking if we want to avoid accessing fields that aren't actually populated, or it won't look like this at all because that's tedious boilerplate few will bother writing. Instead, the constraints will be left completely unstated and depend on internal team's knowledge, humans not making mistakes in order to not explode, which means it will explode. That's crazy. Sometimes something about how we combine these attributes together cause the meaning as a whole to get lost. We find ourselves in a similar spot to where we started in chapter 2. The meaning of our data types only really exist ephemerally inside of the constructor when the validation code is executing. Once it's done, we are left with a data type that forgets part of itself. Okay, so in this constructor, so I am assuming is saying once the data is created here, it forgets itself here, right? So once we do a status, the status is forgotten about, and blah blah blah. We continue our way. Sometimes this representation, with all of its flaws, including the multiple booleans, is one that exists in a real application for real rockets, though anonymized and simplified to protect the guilty, which is him or them. This problem isn't unique. It has existed in every code base, in every language, and across every team on which I have ever worked. It's pervasive because it happens in real application the same way it did here, through the slow accretion of easy to add features. Requirements show up that boil that boils down to we want the existing thing to do just one thing, and then another thing, and then another thing. That's what I think it's going to be doing. And the code required to do it is small, just another field or two. So we add them without taking a step back and asking what effects these additions have on the meaning as a whole. So, however, the good news is that these problems can be avoided once we learn to recognize them. We're already halfway there. We know something is off. We're doing all the defensive programming because the meaning of our code is out of line with the meaning of our data. What we have to learn to see is where the two begin to diverge and how we can bring them back, where the two began diverging. So, quick reset. I think this is where we go back. Let's do something. Let's do something. Let's do something that happens all the time in real life. We reset and try again. Our dry focused refactoring didn't give us the effect we wanted, which is fine. So let's rewind the clock to undo the change. Okay, let's undo all these changes. Boom, 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 boom. Yank two words. And yank two words. Boom. Let's call it skipped. Right. So I think this will bring us back to where we're supposed to be. I don't know. Not sure. Not sure. Oh, okay. Let's do something. Blah blah blah. Let's rewind the clock and change. Okay, further. Let's rewind even further to go back to when we first encountered the first problem, I guess. So let's go further. Let's go RTK. So instead, skip on. Completed by, and rational can go. Completed by, completed on. So this is the furthest we can go back to, right? Right. Completed on and completed by attributes. Okay, this was when we first started getting the feeling of friction in our design. Things only got worse from there when we introduced the notion of skipping. So we'll start over from that point and see if we can point the sheep in a better direction. Once we get our trajectory right, adding things like skipped back in should be a breeze. Okay, so these are the code that we added here. As you can see, we have it here. All right, so that is it for today. See you another time, I guess.